Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of DCT with your host Olivia. I hope you're having a lovely day and you've had a lovely week. So today's fact is that I was actually baptised on the 21st of August 2022 and it was one of the best days of my life. Now in today's episode I'm joined by a member of our church band, Phil Broome. Hi Phil.
Hello Olivia, thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad you could come on. So tell me, Phil, a little bit about yourself, maybe some interests, some things you like doing, and what you do for a living.
Okay, no problem. Well, first of all, I'm a father. There we go. So I'm a dad. I'm a dad to my son, Oliver, and expecting dad as well. Got a daughter coming in just over 2 months' time, so we're looking forward to that.
Very exciting.
So that's my primary role, I'd say. I'm also a husband, which kind of goes hand in hand with being a father, I'd say, to my lovely wife, Laura, who I believe you've had on your podcast.
Yeah.
So for a living, I do all sorts, really. I'm a college lecturer. So that's my main job at the moment. I teach media, music technology at Neath Port Talbot College. I'm a DJ. People still book me, quite surprisingly. And I'm a music producer. I'm a Christian. Hence I'm at church. I like playing in the church band. In fact, music, anything to do with music, I'm extraordinarily passionate about. So I like to make music, I like to remix music, and I collect stuff.
Oh.
Far too much stuff. I like old synthesizers, I like instruments, I have a stupidly large record collection. Bit of a hoarder, really. And to be fair, I never really grew up. I still think I'm 20. And to that end, I like toys. Big fan of toys.
Wow. What type of toys?
Oh, any toy will do, really. Obviously,
Really?
boys' toys. So I've done quite what I'm going to do with my daughter. I had a bit of a shock going down the pink aisle in Smith's the other day. But no, I like to play with figures with Oliver and Star Wars toys, Lego. Oh, it's brilliant.
Yeah, I like Lego.
I like a good jigsaw.
Yeah.
It's not very rock and roll, but I could spend all day on a jigsaw if I allowed myself to.
Yeah, my mum likes jigsaws, so maybe you have that in common. So in the band then, what instrument do you play?
Well, primarily I'm a bass player. So and I came to that because I learnt the violin as a child, and a bass is a back to front violin.
Yeah.
So people assume that when you're a bass player, you're a guitar player. But when Neil came to me and asked if I play in the band, he wanted somebody who could play bass and guitar. And I said, well, I can wing the guitar because the bottom four strings are the same, but those top two strings are still a bit of a mystery to me, to be fair. So when I'm playing guitar, I'm really seriously winging it.
Oh, wow.
But thankfully, we've got Dylan and various other great guitarists in the band now. But bass, I'm in my comfort zone.
Yeah, oh cool. I tried the violin when I was younger, but I couldn't do it. I think I gave up after a couple of weeks.
Well, the trouble with the violin is it doesn't sound too good when you first start.
Oh, yeah.
And it takes a lot of practice to sound good on it, but it's worth persevering.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe in the future. So what about your childhood? What did that look like?
So I grew up in northwest London, in a London suburb called Harrow. I grew up with my older sister, Helena. My mum and dad were opera singers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's a bit of an odd one. By the time I was born, my mum had pretty much put that aside, and she was doing teaching instead. But my dad pursued his career as an opera singer, musical director, and conductor. Hugely talented parents, extremely talented. Still in awe of them now. So they fancied themselves as middle class, I suppose they were, really, and they had high expectations of me. I had a very safe, secure upbringing, I'd say. My parents' sort of love language wasn't sort of all tactile and lovey-dovey, it was more practical.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, very safe. But I've always been a bit standoffish when people come up and hug me because I was a bit like, whoa, what's going on? I think as a child, I was pretty much a square peg in a round hole.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard that term before. Black sheep of the family is another term, because I was always been into popular culture, and my family were very anti-popular culture.
Yeah.
It wasn't proper. It wasn't the right thing to be into.
Yeah.
So there's quite a bit of friction there growing up. And I didn't do particularly well in education. I was a bit below average, and I wasn't really meeting the expectations my folks thought. Strangely enough, I found out later that it was all because I was doing the wrong type of education, but I was too young to know about that, and my folks didn't know about it. I'm not academic at all. I'm very, very practical, and I found my niche through when I did eventually get to university and did a degree, and then various professional qualifications. I found my niche and did very well, so I kind of made up for a rather poor start. Least a point I bring up later on, actually, is quite important. That so my folks spent quite a lot of money trying to educate me, and to be fair, I was a bit of a disappointment to them, which is quite sad. But there we go. But I did get sent to church, which was fantastic.
Yeah.
I was the only one in the family who went.
Oh, really?
I really can't work out why that was. But for some reason, I was sent and enjoyed it and stayed.
Yeah.
I went to the local Methodist church just at the bottom of the road. And they had quite a thriving Sunday school, and as I got older, a really good youth group. And I stuck with it all through my teens into adulthood.
Amazing. I'd love to hear then the moment when you accepted Jesus into your life.
Another very good question, and a nice long answer for you. Well, essentially, I can't remember a time when Jesus wasn't in my life. So it's one of those where I don't really have a revelation moment of when I accepted Jesus into my life.
Yeah.
I've always presumed he was there.
Yeah.
And always, as long as I can remember, communicated with Jesus, prayer, if you like, on a daily basis. It's just this, and whenever I've actually presented myself with the idea that actually there isn't a Jesus there is no God there, that thought is inconceivable to me. It's a horrific thought. So there wasn't a day that I accepted Jesus into my life. I do remember a big conference tour thing from Billy Graham in the late 80s. He had posters all over London saying, "Life, what's the meaning of life?" I went to one of those kind of events, and I remember going forwards and being very emotionally driven. I think that was a big step up in my Christian outlook when I started to take things a bit more seriously, and that must have been when I was around about 17, I think. Yeah, I think that's when I properly accepted him into my life.
Cool. So how has welcoming Jesus into your life then, that kind of properly accepting him, changed everything?
Well, I think from that point onwards, I was a very passionate, avid young Christian. I like doing Christian things.
Cool.
And very involved in the youth at the church. I started going to a different church out in Uxbridge, a very lively, vibrant church with lots of young people my age. We did all sorts of stuff. We would go out on the streets on Saturday with a band and that sort of thing.
Oh, wow.
Got involved in the Christian unit at school. God was very much the centre of my life. And I suppose to that extent things were changing, but then it all went quite the opposite way.
Okay.
And I think this is probably the most significant thing. And as I got older, from about sort of 19, 20 onwards, I went to university, I kind of went the opposite direction. I drew away from Christ and the church and decided that the world had quite enough pleasures to suffice my needs instead. So it happened over quite a long time. It wasn't like an overnight thing. It wasn't one day I went, that's it, I quit. It's just temptation got the better of me. I was no longer within that fold that I had back in Harrow and Uxbridge. I did have a church in Newcastle where I went to uni, but I kind of drifted away from it, got involved in all sorts of worldly things.
Yeah.
And at first, it was all fine. You know, I indulged in what I wanted within reason. I had a good upbringing. I was fairly sensible. I didn't really get drunk. I didn't do too many things like that crazy, but I just kind of moved further and further away. But as time rolled on, I discovered actually I was doing things that I shouldn't be doing on a more regular basis, to the point I was starting to get addicted to certain things, all sorts of things that weren't even legal, weren't good for me, were harming me. And it just escalated from there. I think I entered into a bit of an area of quite profound depression around about the time my mother died. And for a year or so after that, I basically hit the bottom. And I was staying up 2-3 days at a time. taking all sorts of substances to give me the pleasure and what I thought I needed and what I wanted. I got myself down to, I think I got myself to about 6.5 stone.
Wow.
I really wasn't well at all. And so actually the answer to your question is that it went the opposite way. So, I hit the bottom of the barrel here, and but it was by the grace of God. He never ever left my side, even though I tried very hard to kind of run away.
Yeah.
I did find that all the way through that, I still had that natural tendency to communicate and pray. I may not have been praying the right things. It wasn't very profound. It wasn't biblical at all times, but I maintained that communication and usually just asking for stuff, expecting God to serve me, which is perhaps okay up to a point, particularly when there was one situation where I thought, that's it, I've had it. I was lying down thinking, I feel that awful, I'm going to die. I really thought I was going to die, and I cried out to him, and cut a long story short, I'm still here. You would have thought that would be the moment that everything changed, but it wasn't. The moment things changed, or started to change, because it wasn't a snap thing.
Yeah.
Was actually my very, very lovely wife, Laura. And she wasn't a Christian. I certainly wasn't behaving like a Christian. And somehow she came into my life, even though I was such a wreck. And that wretch, she came to my life and wanted to be with me. But after a while, she thought, I can't be with this guy. Look at the state of him. This is not what I'm alive for. I need, I can't do anything about this train wreck of an individual. She must have seen something nice in me to start with. But she was on her way over to where I lived to basically say, enough's enough, we're going to split up. And I answered the door in absolute state. I just said, I need to get help. And she stuck by me, and we got the help I needed. And gradually, things started to turn the other way.
Yeah.
So I've got a very firm belief that God, who works in the most unusual, incredible ways, took a person who hadn't really thought about God, but that he loved dearly, quite clearly.
Yeah.
And sent that person into my life to rescue me. And things turned around. And we moved here eventually. Our life was much better by then. I'd managed to leave my addictions behind. I was much healthier again. And gradually, after we got married, actually, we weren't Christians particularly when we got married. And that was a lovely day. And it wasn't until we had our son that I started having this urge to come back to church and really needed to come back. And Laura had been searching for quite a long time as well. I know that because we spent a long time talking to the Jehovah's Witnesses, and they actually, in their own way, were very, very helpful. I've got to thank them for an awful lot. They are fundamentally Christians as well. They've got some slightly different advantages on the whole Christian aspect.
Yeah.
But it didn't feel right. I just said, look, I want to go to church. And so Laura said, all right, let's go. And we came to Baglan. And again, the story's dragging out a bit. So let's cut the chase. Both Laura and I have been baptised here.
Yeah.
Laura first, then myself just a year or so ago. Jesus is back in my life. Well, he never wasn't in my life. He never went away. But I've now put him higher up in my priorities. I like to say in the driving seat of my life, but, I'm a human and I don't always put him in the driving seat of my life, let's face it.
Yeah.
But, and we're now baptised, Christian, developing, learning, and enjoying the company and fellowship of this wonderful church.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, so think back to maybe when you were 17, maybe that age, and say you were listening to this podcast. What would you like to hear? Or in other words, what would you give to your younger self in advice?
Well, there's two things that sprung out of this exercise. And one is just a bit of practical advice about life.
Yeah.
And I do tell my students this. When you're 17, you're doing your, maybe in the middle of your A-levels or your BTECs or whatever. Whatever you're doing now may define the rest of your life, but it doesn't have to.
Yeah.
the fact that I walked out of school with scraping 2 Ds at A level meant that just wasn't right for me. Whatever I was doing there wasn't right for me. And but I found my way, by the grace of God, into the right kind of education and the right journey. And I got a good degree, I got good professional qualifications, I had great practical experiences, and I'm now in a professional job. I'm incredibly happy.
Yeah.
So I think for 17-year-olds, there's an awful lot of pressure to get the right grades, to choose the rest of your life ahead of you. Don't dilly and dally and think, oh, I've got years to go, because blink of an eye, you're as old as me. I'm ancient. I'm 51 now. I still think I'm 20, but I'm 51. And so it's not like you've got all the time in the world, but it doesn't, whatever's happening now doesn't have to define the rest of your life. That's point one. Point two is that God is running after you. And I discovered that because I ran as fast as I could in the opposite direction. And there he was by my side all the way through. I didn't even know it half the time.
Yeah.
But he just kept up. And he's never going to let you go. I don't think you can ever stop being a Christian once you've made that commitment. Once you're saved, you're saved. I don't think for 1 second during all that time when I was doing all those terrible things that I wasn't saved. I just wasn't being a particularly fruitful Christian. It just took a lot of suffering for me to realise that I had completely run in the wrong direction for miles and miles and miles, and I needed to make that journey back. And he was right there by my side to help get me back. I'm still on that journey now, and it's a long one, but it's a very rewarding and comforting journey. So my advice is, God will run after you. Obviously, try and avoid doing the things I did. It wasn't clever. But if you do make some mistakes in life, God is there with you.
Yeah, good advice. Thank you so much for coming on my podcast.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for listening to another podcast of BCT. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us on all the socials and platforms. See you next time. Bye.
Thank you. Bye now.